everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to the Adobe Font Show, episode 52. Type Stylish Font Pairings, Vol.1.
Okay, that's a long title.
Yeah, I
But
almost lost it there in the middle, as you may have noticed, but I got it back.
my cat got excited, so my cat might jump
We
around
might hear some
here.
meows.
Yeah, she was like, font pairings, and they're stylish too. And there
What?
might be a volume
What?
two. Sign me up.
Sign me up.
So, welcome everyone who's in the chat. It's
Indeed.
great to see people watching
We
and
are
let us
back
know where you're
live.
from.
We were going to do this episode last week, but we had a little reason we couldn't. But now we're back for this week. So, still just as exciting as it was going to be. And yeah.
We've had more time to get excited.
Exactly. We've had more build-up and anticipation, which always helps.
Okay, so should we introduce ourselves?
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So, for those of you that haven't joined us before, I'm Ari. I'm the library manager for Adobe Fonts, which means that I manage our relationships with our Foundry partners who create the fonts on our service and the whole process of adding fonts. And we constantly add fonts every month to expand our library of now more than 25,000 fonts. And I'm located in the San Francisco Bay Area. And Ben?
I am Ben. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a content producer for Adobe Fonts for the team. Generally, I make videos and they stream and things like that, but I try to make it so that you can more easily get use out of type and fonts added when you're using Creative Cloud. So
A
that's what I
noble
do. A
cause.
noble cause indeed. You help get the fonts, I help show how to use the fonts and get people excited about the fonts. So it's a very synergistic thing we have there.
Yes.
So
And where are you located,
I
Ben?
am now in Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, USA. So
Now in Nashville.
yes, for the last few episodes, I have been streaming from Nashville. So
Very cool.
very exciting. I'll have to do a type tour of Nashville. We've done ones in the past for LA and Brooklyn and Denver. But now that I'm here, I'll have to do one here. And Ari, you'll have to take pictures of the Bay Area and we can do a Bay Area type and signage tour.
Definitely. So I see that we have a few people: Alessandra, Umacorn, Clever, and thanks, Cody, for moderating.
Indeed.
And let us know if you have any questions and where you're from in the chat. And if you're watching on YouTube, come over to Behance so we can see you in the chat.
Yes, we can answer questions and just generally talk back and forth about font pairings. So, oh, Cody's in Nashville too. Love the fonts on Broadway. I'll have to check those out. I'm sure there's some
Oh,
great old signs around Nashville. There have to be. I've already seen a few, but I haven't been to the Music Row or that area yet. So I'll have to get over there and bring my camera.
all right.
All right, we have a related poll for today's topic. Font pairing is 1, tricky, 2, fun, 3, hard, 4, all of the above. Or you can write in your own answer. Also, if you have a favorite font pairing, feel free to post it in the chat. We might even try it out in today's stream. So, Ari, I don't know if you have a feeling about pairing fonts. Do you feel like you're pretty good at it at this point?
I think every time it's a struggle for me. There's some that I know that I've used before, like some pairings, and I go back to them. But when I'm creating something new, I go through all the stages, like all of the above. At first, it's tricky, then it's fun, then it becomes hard because you have to actually apply the fonts to the real life thing. And you're like, oh, the size has to be just right. So I think it just has stages of
I,
it,
I feel
even
like
if you have practice.
I feel like too, if you want to do something with a little pizzazz, right? So like if you pick a display type that has a little pizzazz, that can make it a little harder just because that first font you chose has so much character and you're like, should I try to match with something else or should I try to be, and it's like, how do you, it's I find that to be a little bit tricky. Um,
Yeah.
Although I guess my general rule would be if the display type has pizzazz, then the little subheading should probably not have pizzazz. Would be my That would be my default thing, but I aspire to have pizzazz in both places,
I
which is
think that Jake is
which is
going
a
to show
struggle.
us some pizzazz in
I think we're going
all
to be getting pretty
places.
pizzazzy today uh, in today's stream. Speaking of which, yes, it is Stylish Font Pairings Volume 1, so we have more volumes to look forward to in the future. And our very special guest, back because by popular demand, is Jake Giltsoff. Jake, welcome to the stream. Good to have you back.
Thank you. It's nice to be back.
Good. You also just got back from Europe.
I did. I've been twice in the last 2 weeks because I just can't get enough.
Yes. Jet lag. You just want to be
Yeah.
jet lagged all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before you can recover, you want a new time zone, and then
Yes.
just keep yourself on your toes.
It's better to just be in a constant state of jet lag.
Yeah.
If you never adjust back, then it's fine.
Yeah.
Time is a construct, and I don't believe in it. So
Yeah. At this point, I feel like if you flew in a few more times, you would be time traveling. You know?
yeah, I mean sometimes you do. I remember when I was much younger, I went I went like over the side of the globe or whatever. When you go back in time. So I had one day twice. I had 23 hours of the same time again, and it was bizarre.
That is very
Wait,
bizarre.
can you show us how many times you had one day again?
Ooh.
What?
I had the same day twice.
What is this magic? What is this insane magic? What?
Hey, everyone. Just to keep us on our toes.
Yeah.
Just to
Yes.
add some pizzazz, more pizzazz.
Again, more
Some
pizzazz.
more emoji pizzazz.
Always welcome. Okay, so speaking of pizzazz, the font pairings you saw just a second ago when I introduced this, that file is available for download from the link in the description on Behance and also on YouTube. And I think Cody also has that link. You can download that Illustrator file and that will activate all of the fonts that you need for these font pairings. If you want to play around with them, if you like them, you can check that out and get started with some of these pairings before we dive in and kind of work alongside us and as Jake shows us some of the pairings. So check out that link if you're interested in messing around with these font pairs.
Cool. So Cody just posted it in the chat.
Excellent.
And I see that Paloma joined us. Hi, Paloma. Welcome.
So font pairings, Jake. Big subject.
Yes.
But
The
we have
age-old question.
we have to start somewhere. Where shall we begin?
Well, I guess we should start with why the why, the what, the how, all of the questions. I think font pairings is always one of those things that whenever we talk with people or go to conferences or any sort of events, everyone's first question for me is always, what's your favorite font pair, or how can I get better at pairing fonts? And I think it's really one of those areas that I think it's such a broad challenge that we've never really gone too deep on. So it's nice to be spending a bit more time on it today. I think to start with, we have to acknowledge that there's always going to be a reason that you want to pair a font, right? You're probably doing something. You've probably you've gone over the hurdle of finding one font to start with. Maybe it's that one with that pizzazz. Maybe you started with a great font that's super legible for the majority of your text, and then you need something more. You need something to stand out alongside
Headlines and other things.
Right. And I think you could approach this task based off you could say the job that the text is going to do, right? The job that you want this font to do, because sometimes fonts are great for standing out. Sometimes they're great for kind of being invisible almost as well, right? Like when you have a nice you're reading a nice book and you get to the end and you've never even thought about what font was used for this book, because it was, well, part of it is obviously the typography and the typesetting of how it was used, but also the font choice itself is super important. If you were reading a book with a font which had too much pizzazz, you would really struggle, because it would get way too intense. So thinking about the job, that's almost one approach you can take is, if I'm working on maybe something a bit more traditional in terms of design, like a resume or something, I'm going to need to get a bit of both of that. I'm going to need to have something to be super exciting, maybe for the heading or for my name to draw people in, and then the rest of it's going to have to be a bit more boring or sensible,
Boring.
or
Yeah, that's the word I was leaning
boring.
towards.
But we never want to call fonts boring, because I absolutely do not think any font is boring. But sometimes you just need things to not be noticeable. We
Sometimes
want
you
them to
want the
be
type to
sensible.
shine, and
Right.
sometimes you don't want it to shine.
Exactly. But then, as we said, there's also different reasons, right? If you're doing some branding, or there's other different types of design. Maybe you're just making a social media graphic, and you don't have a lot of text. Maybe you've just got a few things there. Again, you're probably going to want some sort of pairing, maybe more than two fonts as well. I think this is a broader piece of font pairing. Is how does that expand out further into a system, like with I think I like to think of them as type palettes as well, right? Where just like a color palette that you would have for your design.
Hmm.
Maybe it's not just two fonts that you have. Maybe it's a whole palette of different options that you have available as part of your your brand system. That way, you have different options that are going to work well together. Maybe you've even got like the sizing for each of those as well, or already there. So you open up your document of whatever you're working on, and within a couple of clicks, you've already made these decisions in the past, which are going to help you in the future.
Yeah, I feel also, as you were talking, I was thinking about what makes font pairing so tricky. And I think that
Yeah.
all of the rules that we have are
Mhm.
downstream of a job to do. And that job
Right.
to do is different for every project. So every
Mhm.
project, you don't really know what rules you need to apply until you
Right.
start the project and decide, so
Yeah.
any of the hard and fast rules really are only hard and fast in the context of a particular job, as
Exactly.
goes anything with type. So basically, the first thing to figure out is the thing you're trying to do. There's just making cool combos of fonts that look good together, but even those probably evoke a certain emotion, or they evoke a certain kind of pizzazz, or whatever there is, or they are, and legible versus not, exciting versus all of these things. So again, any of these rules also can be broken once you know how to break them, and also when you have your idea of what you want to do. If you want to do something real wacky, well then the rules are off. The training wheels
Yeah.
are gone, and you can just go crazy.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think about rules as well, especially with all things typography. That there's these quote unquote rules that we have in place, and I think sometimes that can actually be more intimidating, because it feels like you have to do everything by the book, and you have to do this, you have to do that. But as you say, it's all based off the context of what you're actually working on. And
Mm.
I think it's I like what you say about training wheels. Like they almost should be thought of as just here's a starting point. Here's all the best practices that you have. They aren't well, you could say rules are meant to be made to be broken, right? Like these are things they're meant to help you in the start of it. But as soon as they start getting in the way, or making it too intimidating, you should take what you need, and ignore the rest of them. Because at the end of the day, if you think it looks good and these two fonts look good together, you're probably onto something there. And like we'll be diving a little bit more into some of these rules, or some of these helping principles. But really, it's more about trying to practice doing this, and boosting your confidence. Because at the end of the day, if it looks good, and it's meeting the needs of the brief, or you've shown it to whether it's a client, or you've tested this out in with like actual people, and it's resonating, then that's the most important thing here.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I wonder if we want to share the screen and we can start talking about some of the pairings that we have and some of the ways that you can go about doing this as well, doing it yourself, or even taking these as a starting point, and maybe one of these is standing out, and you can find a different pairing than those, or however these are helpful for you as inspiration. I'd love for people to take these and run with them. So when it comes,
Real quick, for those who are
yeah.
new to joining us, the link for this file that Jake has open right now is in the chat, and you can download it from Cody posted it, and then you can have all these fonts and mess around with them and try out these pairings. So if you want to work alongside us while we talk about these, go do that. All right.
Yeah, I guess a quick note about Illustrator as well. So if you're not if you're not feeling too confident with Illustrator, that doesn't matter for the purposes of this. This is just kind of an example, and one benefit of this is if you open up this file, all of the fonts will automatically activate from Adobe Fonts, and you'll just have them there ready. So that's a nice thing, a nice feature that Illustrator has. So if you as soon as you open this file, you'll get all of these and be able to try them all out yourselves. And also a note about my setup for Illustrator. So the way that I prefer to have, my panels arranged is with I think you can see my whole screen. So I have, if you go to Window and then Workspace, I have this one called Typography, which is one of the default ones. So if you click on this, it sets up all of the panels that you might need, to really dig into the type over here on the right-hand side for you, which is, just one of my favorite ways to work with type. Maybe the final output that you have for your project isn't in Illustrator, but this is still a good, fun way to explore what you can get out of them, because you have every single feature that you're ever going to need, most likely for type is available in Illustrator.
I would like to point out that in all 52 episodes of the show, no one has mentioned the typography workspace in Illustrator until now.
Oh.
So you heard it here, folks. You heard it here.
Top tip. Okay, so one thing we can do is, I'd love if anyone in the chat wants to point out their favorite of these, or anything that they'd like us to discuss a bit further. Give a shout out, and we'll dive into a bit of these. But to start, we'll go over a few reasons that some of these work, or a few approaches that you might take to go about pairing your own fonts. So one way that I like to approach things is, I think typically, I think one way that you might describe it is having an anchor font or an anchor typeface here. So you've made a decision to start with, whether it's based on any of these jobs that we talked about briefly, or you've just found some inspiration, and you really love this particular look, right? It's going to be perfect for your brand. Maybe you already have like a brand typeface, right? You have your logo font that's been used, or another font that's been used for some of the previous branding, and it's not quite meeting the needs of what you need to do now, so you need to add in something else. So you can kind of think of this as that anchor to start you off, and from there we're gonna start to try and build out this little system. First by another font to make it a pair, maybe even going further than that, and then based off that, you can make these decisions. So sometimes I think there's kind of a few of these principles are focused around either contrast versus similarity. And what I mean by that is, sometimes you want to take an approach where you want to really find something different than the font that you've already started with. So maybe that could be in terms of pizzazz versus no pizzazz. It might be the classic, I've got a serif font, so I should use a sans serif font to go with it, right? Contrast can mean a lot of different things as well, right? It can be contrast against so many different principles here, right? It might be literally the contrast of the fonts, right? Like maybe you have a really high contrast font for your headings, and then for the body copy you have something with less contrast. And that's the contrast of contrasts. Or it
Yeah,
might be
I've always thought of it as you need to have certain things being similar and certain things being different
right.
enough. But every time it kind of varies. Like it might be that they are really similar in the contrast and the X height and a lot of the style, but one is a serif, one is a sans. But
Right.
there's always like those two elements that are in, what's the word?
Tension.
Tension.
Ooh,
The
I like that.
tension that makes it interesting.
Yeah, I think the real like thought process behind that is, if you have two things that look too similar, there's that kind of uncanny valley of like, why are they not just the same? Like it feels like
It
there's
doesn't
that
seem
like clash,
intentional that you
right?
paired them. It's like, oh, they put these two together, but they're not different enough.
Almost like they meant to use the same font and accidentally didn't.
Yes, right. It looks like a mistake potentially.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe this is a good example of that contrast as well here, and this is using the width as that axis here. So the top piece of text here is a super condensed. All the characters are so narrow, and then surfboard and wetsuits is almost kind of wide as well, right? It's that tension between these two. That's why at least I think they're working quite well together here, is because they are so different. There is reasons that Ari, as you mentioned, that sometimes you do want to have other similar elements as well. And I think if I think about maybe even this one down here, I would definitely not say they are
The same.
similar. But especially when the further you kind of zoom out from this as well, I think there's these little kind of nicks
Extra
into
flourishes. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of echoed with some of these angles, right?
Yeah.
These are always things that you can look at. Is when you really get into the text itself, you can try and match different elements, right? Like maybe over here, let's see if there's something going on. You can look at the angles here. So this is, I wouldn't say even this is very angular at all. In fact, and probably that's why these feel like they sit okay together, is because they're both fairly soft, right? All these serifs on Mango, for example, there's nothing super sharp and angular.
It
And
looks almost
then
round, even though it's a serif, it has a round softness to it. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, when you look at it super up close and you think about all these details, and then you take a step back, and that's why some of these things work well together. Is and that's the opposite of contrast. It's the similarity piece there of they both have those characteristics in common.
We've gotten some interest in the Skatepark one, and also someone on YouTube's favorite is the Game On arcade bar
Okay,
one.
let's dig into some of these. So, okay, Skatepark. I'm gonna grab these and let's have a play with them. Let's see, explore these a little bit more. So we have Good Life, Brush, and Folk Roth.
Nice.
So let's see, Good Life. Why don't we go and have a look at these on the website as well and see if we can find out a bit more about them. So that's one thing as well that you can do when you're thinking about pairing fonts is taking a look at why they were designed and what they're good for, and thinking about how you can use that information to also help you make decisions about what would go well with them. So if I come over to the website and find these ones, let's have a little bit more of a look. Okay, so Good Life from our partner HVD Fonts clearly has a bunch of different styles actually, and you can see from these images that it's this collection of different handmade, handcrafted fonts. And whenever I see this type of thing, I think these are great for bringing that personality, that human touch to your designs. I think often, you know, with digital type and type on screen, things can start to feel a bit too mechanical or
Too
too
perfect.
impersonal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's some of the stuff that's lost from the print era, where there was printing mistakes, and there's the more tangible feel to things. So I love these collections where you get ready-made pairings for you already, right? Like that's a couple of I guess a month ago we did the stream on super families.
Mhm.
That's why all these things work well together. It's because they were literally designed at the same time and made to go well together. And you can see here, in this example, you know, you've got ready-made pairings for you. So we had the brush one, right? This one up the top.
Yeah,
But
Yes.
yeah, as you can see, there's a bunch more in this family as well. And I could quite have easily have chosen these to go with it as well.
that would be too easy though.
It would be too
You
easy.
needed a
Maybe that would be,
challenge.
that's, I did need a challenge. But yeah, obviously, another point here as well is there's no such thing as a perfect pairing, right? It's going to depend on the context, and I think within this little file that we've given you, we provided some of that context as well, right? Like we're imagining that this is for a skate park, and we want to have that skate vibe. It needs to feel a bit grungy and cool, which is why I think actually, if I was to say the anchor typeface in this one would probably be this folk rough, which we can look at quickly as well. But the reason that these are working well together, in my opinion, again, is kind of that similarity piece as well, right? Folk is a very rough and ragged font that again is bringing in that kind of personal touch. You could almost imagine that this has been made by tearing paper or cutting it out
Yeah.
with scissors or something, and then scanned in, and then it's very much that kind of handmade sort of feel. So putting these together, I think we get that balance of if we zoom all the way in, all of these edges are so ragged, and those similar features, even though one of them is a script, one of them is very much not, right? There's a lot more softer sweeping curves in this one, whereas this is more angular. But again, that's the balance. You need some things that contrast, some things that are similar, and I think that's why these feel like they're working together. And obviously, once you've made a decision about the fonts, you still do have to put them into context as well. And I think these pairings that we're going to go over in Vol.1 of the stream, when we look at these, it's kind of more of a, sorry for all the zooming around, it's more of a like, these are kind of like for branding, right? These are the kind of when I think of these types of pairings, I'm always thinking kind of the one-to-one. They're almost both headings for this example. I think maybe next time we'll go into some of those heading to body text pairings, because while similar, I think there's a few different things that you might do differently there. If I was to set a whole paragraph of text with this kind of arcade font, that would not quite work out. So but you could totally picture these being used on a big sign for this arcade bar, or on the branding of this surf shop, right? These are cases where you need the name of something and maybe some supporting text.
With some of these, Jake, you were talking about the anchor font. Could that be switched around with some of these, or does the
Yeah,
anchor like stay on the
I think
main word?
that's always part of the process. I think you make a decision to start with. Maybe for example, I fell in love with this idea of using folk for the skatepark word, and I was trying to find something to go with it. So East Side, let's pretend we're making a new skate park, and this is the kind of the branding that we have. This is the name. I guess we could even put all of it into the same font. We could have tried that out as well. So like east side, like you could try and use one font. Maybe this would actually work okay, but I think there's some extra pizzazz that you get from having both of them here. But yeah, we could totally switch these
Also,
up.
the way you did it before, Jake, tells me that East Side is the location and Skatepark is the branding. So like Skatepark
Yeah,
is the logo and East Side is this particular location of the skate park, which is
right.
the logo. That's what it looked like before.
Yeah. But then, yeah, as with everything, really, you go into this and it's a real journey, right? There's no one true way with this, but it's here. I don't think this worked as well, right? Skate park now. This doesn't have the right emotion for me, and I think that's another piece with font pairing is emotion. I think maybe that's versus the job that it's doing, right? We've talked a bit about
Mm-hmm.
you want things to stand out, especially with this branding, right? But emotion is the flip side of that as well, because skate park here now feels too this doesn't feel as grungy and cool, right? If I was going to a skate park, which I've not done very many times in my life, I've maybe done a few times, but this doesn't this isn't what I picture when I picture skate park. Like it's too flourishy, it's too it's too much on that handmade feel now. Whereas if we flip back to what we had before, if I just hit undo a million times, this has that right vibe for me at least. And the vibe is also going to be contextual, and it's going to be maybe different across the world as well, right? What I think of a skate park is a very much a American skate parks or whatever, right? So it's all of these things do depend on context, and the process that I take is find that anchor, try out some other options with it, and see if it's playing well. But you're not, as you asked, Ben, you're not tied to that anchor at all.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think there's more flexibility with these ones, as you were saying. Both of them are kind of headings and it's branding. It's not about a big block of text, in which case
Right.
you couldn't really flip them around if one font is better for text. But
Right.
I wanted to say that in the chat, Cody said, "This show is great because it introduces me to fonts that I didn't know existed." And Melissa responded and said, "I'm working on a package design right now and thought I'd scroll through Adobe fonts for some inspiration. Perfect timing." So she's discovering fonts live, which is great.
Excellent.
Exactly. I think font pairings can also be inspiration themselves, and that's one of the features that we have worked on the website. So I think we should have, if you found a font to start with, you can actually if you click on which one was it I was using? This one. So if I click similar fonts and pairings, that scrolls me down the page, and down here we do actually have some pairing suggestions that you can use as inspiration to start with. This is more maybe what we'll touch on the next show, where you have a heading and a body text, which is a slightly different pairing. But these can be used as inspiration or starting points. And we also have the recommendations page on the website, which will start to show you some of these pairings as well, which maybe if you're just trying to get an idea of what you could use for your next project, you can come here to fonts.adobe.com/recommendations, and we will give you some inspiration straight away.
Another good site for pairings, if you know a font that you like, is Fonts in Use. And if you go there and you find the page for that particular font, it will show you real life designs and packages and posters and things that people have created that used that font. And then you can see, generally, they paired it with something, and you can see what they paired it with and just get some ideas and inspiration that way. Fonts in Use is a great place to find first fonts that just to use. So like if you're using a particular font, you could see how other people used that font, but then you can also find some great pairings. So highly recommended.
It's a great way to lose several hours of your day.
Indeed.
Because you Okay, shall we jump back to another one? I think was it
Game
Game
on
On
Arcade
was the
Bar is our next one.
yep.
And
Okay,
then someone liked Breezy Brunch or something about brunch.
Over easy.
Over Easy Brunch.
super easy. I love Brunch as well. Okay, so let's maybe I don't know how bright this is coming across on the screen. I'm just gonna tone these back a little bit so we can see them. Wow, look how boring these look in black. Maybe the color was a big part of it as well. And this
Well,
is
this that tells you
another thing
something.
to
Yeah, that's about the
yeah,
context, right? Like this looks
exactly.
totally different than the pink and blue. Totally different.
Right. And that's why another reason that pairing fonts can be so difficult, right? Because you go to a website or maybe you see something in use and you have to extrapolate that out from maybe it's just maybe you only see the quick brown fox or what some sample text, and it's very difficult to then extrapolate that out into your own context, without the colors, without imagery, without maybe you need to even mock it up on a drinks can or a sign or something so you could see it in the actual place that people are going to see it, which all takes time, and it's a process and it's part of the journey to doing it. But now, if we talk a bit about these two fonts, we have JetLab Variable, which is a variable font. We can talk a bit more about how you can use all those features. And then, oh gosh, Puffin. Puffin is one of my favorite fonts of recent. It's so fun.
And there's a lot
Um,
of different um,
there are
kinds, like filled in and
lots of different kinds of Puffins. Gosh,
oh my gosh, look how many Puffin families there are. Puffin Arcade is its own whole
oh,
family.
oh, okay, sorry. There's a lot of Puffins, but we're specifically looking at Puffin Arcade, which is, I guess you could say, the party Puffin.
The pizzazz
Um,
Puffin.
this
Yeah.
is definitely the pizzazz, and obviously, we're really emulating old video game type from the '80s, where this it's pixels, it's on these old tiny screens.
Very
Look at
limited.
this one. Look at this
Yeah.
one. This is amazing.
Limited shading capabilities. The drop
Exactly.
shadow is basically just little tiny circles, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then they have the top, and you can pair it with a different bottom to make
Oh,
the
wow.
colors
That's
to
so fun.
change color. I don't
Yeah,
think
so I
I
guess you could
explained
you
that
could
well.
layer you could layer
Layer,
these as
that's the
well.
word.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, obviously, for this example, our context is, a bar or something video game focused. So, we want when we think about emotion, and yeah, I see the comment about Wreck-It Ralph, right? Like this is totally,
Same. Yeah.
this is what we want to evoke with these characters, right?
We want people to see this font and think the big video game consoles with the joysticks and the buttons
Right.
and the putting
There's that
coins in.
nostalgia.
Yeah, throwing coins in and all of that.
Yeah. And then alongside that, I think this one, it's maybe a bit more, I guess I would call this kind of sci-fi or spacey or um uh maybe a little bit industrial, but it's still got that kind of, I can imagine this being used on old screens, right? It's the forms are fairly simple in themselves, and I think it's this is a little bit more of a, and I'm not going to say boring because this definitely is not boring, but it's a bit more of a blank canvas that can sit alongside something this loud, right? Because if we had two things that were too much pizzazz, it would be overload, and it would take away from it as a whole.
That's a good point too. Like
Um,
the top one evokes similar things when combined
yes,
with arcade bar. So the top one, because it's a little bit more of a blank slate, you could put in different context and it might evoke something
right.
different. In this case, paired with the very digital old school bitmap font, it evokes a very similar vibe.
Yeah, right. Because yeah, if we took this one away and just had the Jet Lab on its own, maybe we would feel a bit more like, I don't know, we're making a movie about space travel.
And it's also
Uh,
variable, so you can change how it looks too.
yes. Let's now change this up to a, this feels way more. I'm just gonna, if I hit tab here, I can hide away all my panels so you can see a bit more. So yeah, if we dig into some of the, of course I need them to play with the variable font stuff, but if we dig into some of these settings here available with JetLab in particular, so obviously, a variable font has lots of capabilities. I think we spoke about them, I guess, a couple of months ago now on the stream. Um, what was that, episode 47 or 48? We'll have to get back to you on that. But we have these amazing capabilities that are built in, and this one is super fun. And again, you can kind of see that obviously, it's called JetLab. It has a thrust slider here, a thrust axis, as they're known, which allows you to control,
Kind of
the
the width
width.
and kind of the thickness too.
Well, yeah, so
The
thrust actually does.
horizontal
Yeah,
thickness.
the thrust is doing a lot of things at once, and so I think actually you can control these things individually as well. So yeah,
So
these
cool.
three all individually change things. So you can change, and here we're looking at the H and the K, and this really changes that middle bar. Oh, and the E.
I think once the middle bar gets lower, it becomes more of a comedy, and then
Yeah,
when it's higher, it's
Oh,
more of a drama
that's cool.
movie.
oh. This makes me think of that old kind of art deco-y type as well, where
Yeah.
sometimes they're super high, sometimes they're super low. More conventionally, they're kind of in the middle. But as soon as you shift things down or up, it brings so much more emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, so now we can also change how much contrast we have as well, right? So here, we boost up how thick we have horizontals and boost and drop down the vertical stress. This has such a different vibe already, right? Like this is way more contrast.
That looks like a
Whereas if we
sci-fi
keep
movie to
them,
me. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think generally everything that
Ooh,
you do to this still keeps it pretty sci-fi,
that's
but
true.
you can really change things. So now I'm super thin. I think to get the full sci-fi effect, I would also boost the tracking here. It's the classic.
The word
Um,
unknown is so weird in this font.
Yeah.
It looks
yeah, the
like
end.
Cyrillic or something.
It does, isn't it?
The
It's kind
ends
of
are
hard to
just
read.
U's turned upside down. It's a very, yeah.
I'm like,
So
is this,
maybe
can
maybe.
I read this? I can't.
Oh, so I was doing mixed uppercase and lowercase as well. Maybe that wasn't helping.
Oh, cool.
Um, but yeah, you kind of get the idea here. So I'm gonna have to jump back and grab this one from the original because I've gone too far down this rabbit hole.
Too many undos to get back to that one.
I know, yeah, that would take us a long time. But yeah, the point being, right, so the emotion is a big part of font pairing, right? Like you have to have something in mind, and we're not just doing font pairings for fun, unless maybe you are doing it for fun, which is also totally fine. But usually, we have a job to do. We're trying to design something in particular. Maybe you have something in your mind's eye, or you found some inspiration that you want to use for that emotion. But you're trying to do something, and you have that context in mind. And when you find something that's really working, then maybe you find this one first, and then you're like, actually, I want to have something a bit more punchy to go with it. Or you might find the pizzazz first, and then have something else that sits well. There's no right or wrong in terms of which you start with. There, it's really about whichever you come up with first, because it can be hard to find the right thing straight away.
I also, for that one, I could imagine Game On being like a little tagline and much smaller, in which case you could just do
Yeah,
a clean
right.
sans serif for that, and it just Game On is like what it's telling you to do, you know?
True. Yeah, that's totally right. This could be, we could do something a lot more simple with this as well. I think so. If in Illustrator, a quick way that you can find fonts that you have from Adobe as well, you can filter to your activated fonts. You can filter to a sans serif if we want to quickly, try out finding something different. I think we probably
This
want
is
something
real
kind of
live
tricky.
font pairing right now.
Live font pairing.
We
The pressure is on here.
Yeah, it is.
So then we want something that works well at smaller sizes as well. We probably want it to be a little bit bold. Maybe we could do something like Azo Sans. Maybe this is maybe too much flair though, I think.
Maybe if you all caps it.
Ooh, that's a good idea. I feel like
Maybe a
Oh, to kind of
sans.
go with the arcade bar.
In one of your
needs to be rounded
pairings, you
also.
had a rounded sans.
Was it?
Forgot which one it was.
Maybe.
That looks good to me. Mwendwa says, choosing the right font is a magical skill on its own.
Indeed.
That is definitely true.
Game on. I like it.
I think I think this works okay. I think what it loses in that is if I'm thinking about those old screens like this really it feels a bit too modern in my mind. It feels like if I really want to immerse myself in this this 80s sort of styling, then it's not fully done that, but it works. It still does work, right? It does. It's picking up on the curves of these ones and showing it in that cleaner way.
Agreed. The previous one was better.
Okay. We tried. It's I think that's another thing though is it's easy to see when things don't work or have a hunch that it's not working. I think it's sometimes it's hard to know when things are working, but I think the more and more that you practice doing this, right, and even going through an exercise like this, like hey, go and make 20 font pairings, make up some fake brands and just practice, right? Have fun. It's a fun exercise, and I think you can really find a lot of hidden gems within our library, right? We have so many fonts available, and sometimes if you have a few hours to play with, it can be a good exercise to dig a bit deeper, see if there is things that you haven't ever looked at before, and then go through an exercise where you pair them, and it can help build up that muscle memory of looking for things that could work with it.
Yeah. So if you have, let's say you have a pairing that you really like for a brand, and then you need to create multiple assets for them, like business cards, packaging, a sign for their business. Maybe we could pick one of them and you could show like, how would you adapt this treatment to those different applications? Because they won't all need the same exact placement of text and everything.
Yes. Okay. So we have about 5 more minutes. Let's do a speed round. And I know let's put this away for now. I know Over Easy was also mentioned. So let's have a quick play with this. So we've got a few different colors in our palette. Let's quickly look at these. We're making our own little mini brand here now.
A brand in 5 minutes. Let's see if we can
brand in 5 minutes.
Bonus episode, branding in 5 minutes.
Yeah, this is live. It's all gonna go helplessly wrong.
Jake isn't going to be paid per hour for this job.
No,
then
this
he'll
is
only
one
make
where you quote up front. You say, I need a lot of money.
$10,000 for the project, and then do it in 5 minutes.
Okay, so
On stream.
what do we want to do? We want to do like a little, they could be a sign, they could be, maybe a business card.
Let's say it's a sign. But the sign has to be circular, Jake. They said it's one of those signs that comes out of the business. And when you're walking, you see it.
Or a circle, yeah.
It has to be a circle. That's what they said.
These are some tough clients here. I love it.
Yeah.
I love
And they
it.
have
So
multiple
let's,
signs, but this is the one that protrudes from the building as you're walking by.
let's imagine that we've got this sign that's coming out of the building. I'm gonna have to do this one very quickly. Okay,
Ooh.
align them. You know, I think that green was kind of working. Maybe there's not enough contrast for this, but you know, we'll pretend that wherever the location is, it's always perfect lighting, so you can
If
read.
I think it lights up.
if the green was yellow, it could be
Lights
an
up.
egg yolk. I'm just saying. Over easy
Oh,
egg yolk. I
okay,
don't
we're
know.
changing the brand on the fly. Okay, so that would make a lot more sense when over easy. Do we want to go for like, you know, one of those really fancy,
Yeah,
like
the fancy orange ones.
the bougie eggs?
Hmm This is a quail egg yolk we got going on here.
There we go.
Pasture raised,
Oh yeah,
free range.
free range chicken egg yolk.
Okay. Oh, we could even make this an egg, couldn't we? I wonder if we. Okay.
You could
Can we
definitely
do
make
this
it an egg.
sometime?
Or maybe the whole thing is just the O. Like the whole.
Ooh, maybe we could make the O into the yolk. Can we pull that off?
Oh.
I think we've maybe veered away from font pairings, but we could make this work.
Oh, I think this is worth exploring.
Oh, this is so cool.
And it was inspired by the font pairing,
Nice
so I
one.
think it still counts.
This is
Nice.
genius.
Then the brunch co sits nicely over here. We can maybe right align that. Look at that, it sits in. You know, another thing to look at, obviously, if you are doing a kind of a branding exercise, is you have to think about, let me zoom back out over to these, is how things sit well together as well, right? You know, these might look somewhat haphazard, and you know, there was some thinking that went into these, right? So, you know, sometimes centering things might feel better, right? Sometimes, you know, if you've got some like these swash characters coming down over here, it made more sense to have it left aligned. If you've got you know, a lot of descenders as well, you can put in some type on a path or apply you know, this arc within Illustrator
Bend
as
it a
well.
little
That's
bit,
you
yeah.
can do. Yeah, right. You have to make things sit well together, otherwise, you know, sometimes it's too much of a clash. So over here, you know, it feels like, you know, actually we've got this Y coming down, we have this negative space over here. Maybe that works well to how they
And the C
sit.
on the co kind of sits in where that Y makes that little
Yeah.
space. It's good.
Okay, we need to start our new restaurant.
Yay.
This is actually really nice. Hey, this is
Yeah.
I like this way
It's
more.
a great idea. And that's why I asked, like, okay, this sits nice, the example you had at the beginning, but what if the client says it has to be circular, it has to be this and that, and then what your pairing may have had like crazy swashes that only worked if things were placed a certain way, and then how do you adapt?
Yeah, and there's even, you know, you even have to decide about, you know, pairings aren't always going to be shown together as well. You have to decide, is this going to sit well enough on its own, right? Because, you know, sometimes maybe you just have the over easy on its own, right? Like maybe you wouldn't have the brunch co. Maybe, you know, if you have a more simple sign, maybe you would want to do. We're keeping this new yellow O. Maybe you'd want to do something on its own, right? Like so you have to think about all of these things, all these decisions going into this pairing stuff, which is, you know, why it's always it's a challenge, but I think, you know, you have to really try and enjoy the process and you know, think about as many of these different variables. It does look like a frying pan as well. This is perfect. I think we should open a new brunch.
It's pretty it turned out really well. I'm happy with this.
Yeah.
Okay, we are very rapidly coming to the end of our live stream today. This was Font Pairings Volume 1. Definitely come back for Volume 2 when it happens. Also, in this chat, there was a link to all these font pairings. You can download the file and you can have all these fonts immediately and mess around with them. Also, Jake has a website called Make Type Work that is all about typography tips and tricks. Definitely check it out. There's a bunch of cool recaps of various things. There's some fonts and pop culture stuff. There's a recap of, was it TypeCon?
Yes.
A recap of TypeCon. Bunch of cool stuff in there. Check it out. And finally, follow us on Behance, Behance.net/Adobe Fonts. We announce all future episodes here, and we post all our old episodes there as well. most of those episodes are evergreen content like this that you can revisit at any time for inspiration. So definitely check out the past catalog and subscribe. And if you have any comments or notes or features or fonts you want to see or anything, go to adobefonts.uservoice.com and let us know. Our product teams and our design team, including Jake, check that, and also to decide what we do in the future. So definitely do that. Ari, Jake, thank you so much for joining the stream today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And stick
this is a great
around.
one.
Next is Give Your Zine Character Personality with Izzy.
Stick
So that'll be
around.
a fun stream.
We'll see you next time, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone.